Welcome to the Dream Life is Real Life podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Hermanson. I know it might seem cheesy or cliche, but if you've got a sleeping giant inside of you, or you just feel like you're made for more, then there's no coincidence you landed here on the Dream Life is Real Life podcast. Listen, as a girl from small town Wisconsin who decided to go all in to her dream life vision, I know how crazy it can feel to chase after wild ideas. Since leaving my 9-to-5 job in academics back in 2015 to becoming a yoga teacher, a life coach, and now a digital nomad, currently living in Merida, Mexico with my husband and Labradoodle, I know that all the cheesy cliches are true. I've watched a lot of my dream life become my real life right in front of my eyes. Oh, and I've learned a whole lot about sales, business, and marketing along the way, and I want to share all of that with you. So here, you can consider me your friend and mentor. As a certified business coach, success trainer, international speaker, author, and copywriter, I've helped hundreds of coaches and entrepreneurs build, scale, and enjoy their online businesses. So here on the show, you'll find the real people, concrete tactics, and weekly motivation and inspiration to make your dream life your real life. I'm going to let you into the nooks and crannies of these dream lives and dream businesses and offer lots of real talk along the way. Because to be a true leader in whatever you're endeavoring in your life and to create a legacy that you're proud of, you need a tribe lifting you up with you on the journey. And I've made it my mission to be that partner with you. Because after all, we are all in this together. By the way, if you'd like some help improving your business and life, then we just might be able to help. Head on over to dreamlifeisreallife.com to learn more about what we do and how I might be able to personally support you and just continue this conversation in making your dream life your real life. All right, let's get to it. Friends, welcome back. It's Hannah here, and today we are joined by Dr. Fanike-Kiara Young is a Master Healing Alchemist that empowers women to overcome the trauma that is stopping them from moving forward in all areas of their lives. She specializes in healing trauma by focusing on the mind, body, and spirit. She uses her own history of trauma, spiritual training, academia, and client experiences to help others combat trauma responses, limiting beliefs, negative self-talk, and to live the life they want. She provides her clients with real life coping tools that can be used to help heal themselves. She is a licensed trauma therapist, transformational trauma specialist, doctor of behavioral health, master Reiki practitioner, as well as an author, speaker, consultant, coach, wife, and mother with a 2-year-old napping right now, making it happen. Wow. Lots on your little bio resume here. And I'm guessing that this has been a lifelong journey for you. How long have you been doing this work for yourself and getting certified in this?
That's a great question. So I would say my actual healing work started when I was maybe 21. So that's about 18 years. That was when I really started to understand the impact that trauma has played and has had on my life. And it was from there where I started researching and really getting some, I guess, more background information and knowledge on my parents. So for my history, just I would say that my trauma, the first time I can remember, the first traumatic event I can remember was at 4 years old, where I was looking out the window of our apartment in Brooklyn, New York, and a man walked up to another man and shot him in the head. Wow. So that was at 4 years old. And then at 6, that was when things really took a turn in my life. So that was when I witnessed my dad physically assault my mom. And I think just almost to the point of killing her. At least I thought that he was going to, especially at that age. It was extremely scary. And he left promising to come back to get me and to kill her. So the next day I would go to school. My mom sends me to school as if nothing had happened the night before. And when I get out, I go to my grandmother's house as I normally did because my mom worked 12 to 14-hour days to take care of my sister and I. And this time, though, when I got to my grandmother's house, she was there. And she calls me in the kitchen and she says the 3 words that absolutely changed my life. Your dad died. Ooh. And literally the night before, he was physically assaulting her, threatening to come back and kill her. And then the next day, he was dead. And of course, at 6, in the moment, I wanted to protect my mom. I wanted to take care of her. I wanted to make sure that he wouldn't continue to hurt her. However, nowhere in there did I think my dad was going to pass away, nor did I want him to pass away, because I still, of course, loved him. So my trauma really started, and it really just, I think, started to impact me on a large scale in childhood.
I mean, those are very formative years, right? That's the time when we're believing or deciding what we believe about the world. If the sky is blue, if we're good enough, if cookies taste good or bad, extremely formative years.
Yes. So that's most of our development, as we know, takes place in childhood. And so the things that we witness, the things that we experience, the things that we're told, they typically have those long lasting impacts on us that I think we do not really take into consideration most of the time, especially when we're working with children and we're parents ourselves. So of course, I never got any help. My mom, I never went to therapy. My sister never went to therapy. We witnessed the physical abuse, and my mom never went to therapy either, because it just wasn't something that we did, especially in predominantly minority communities. Therapy is not necessarily a thing. It's viewed, there's a lot of stigma that's attached. And I think it's getting better now, but we're still not at the place where where the majority of people are open to going to therapy. And it's a tool. And that's what I try to explain to people. It's a tool that you use along the journey. That's it. It's really, regardless of what has happened, healing requires you to really own it as your own. And then the therapist is sort of like a coach at the gym, so you go to the gym and you're like, hey, I want to lose weight and I need to work out, but I don't really know what to do to get me there. And so the gym trainer kind of steps in as a tool to help to get you to the point. And so that's how I look at therapists. That's how I look at coaches. That's how I look at those people or those professionals that's been trained. And then they come into our lives and they help us to just reach the goals that we have set for us to reach.
Yeah, no, that's such a great analogy. And I really appreciate, the idea that we're all just we're picking up traumas and then we're picking up tools. And if, you're willing, or you're the type of person probably listening to this podcast, or an entrepreneurial type, we do set goals. We do want something new or different or more for our lives. So I'm curious for you, at 21, was there an aha moment, or what really inspired you to start picking up some of these tools in your, young adulthood?
So at the time I was in college and I was taking a psych 101 course. So my major at the time was, I was pre-law, or I was majoring in criminal justice and African-American studies. And at the time with taking that Psych 101 course, we were covering trauma. And the instructor just really broke down how trauma transforms our minds, our bodies on an integrated level. What does that look like? And that, I think, was the first time I had really understood that, one, you've experienced trauma. 2, it impacted you. And 3, it is still impacting you, because there was nothing I had done for it to not impact me. I didn't know, but it
was running on that subconscious level of just this is what I believe about myself. This is what I view the world as. You hadn't examined.
Exactly. But it has shaped my life so much. And even with it shaping my life, I didn't trace the outcomes to the trauma. So I had difficulty in relationships. I was dating, but I wasn't opening my heart. I wasn't able to trust anyone. I wasn't in a place where, if someone told me I love you, I had received two marriage proposals by the time I was 21. Wow. And nothing in me was yeah, I love you also, or I love
or I
you.
want to sign up for that. Like
Yes.
that's
Yes. And
scary to sign up for that agreement that you
exactly.
saw. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of it, though, when I look back, came from the trauma because I wasn't even able to really position myself to open myself up to even begin to entertain any of it or be accepting of the love because I was so guarded from the trauma and just learning, your parents or your caregivers, you learn so much from them. And I had learned not to trust, like I can't trust anyone. If my dad is abusing my mother, how can I then turn around and trust someone with my heart and just with myself? How can I do that? So it really shaped me. There was a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. I was a cutter as a teenager. So I used to cut my arms and my legs. And my mom, she would find like razors and she'd be like, well, why do you have these razors? And I don't even remember what I would tell her, but whenever I would get frustrated or angry or upset, I would cut. And I resorted to a lot of, just maladaptive behaviors. And there were so many negative emotions. So that those limiting beliefs, that negative thinking, I didn't feel like I was good enough. I didn't. And I mean, I was in college, I was taking care of myself. I was working, I was doing all of the things that are indicative of being enough, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel loved. And I definitely wasn't happy. So being in college and in that class kind of set a catalyst in place for me to just start really exploring and starting to figure out what happened, even with my parents, like, why did this happen? And why did my dad do this? And why did my mom continue to open the door and let him in the house? So those were the questions that I had. And then it made me really start figuring out why I was feeling the way that I felt and why wasn't I receptive to the love and why couldn't I open myself up?
Yeah, I can relate to having Psych 101 being that window of awareness as to like, why am I like this? Or like, what are these patterns that I keep running? Because what I've come to learn as a coach and as a psych major myself is that we all have some trauma, right? Varying degrees of things that happen to us that aren't always necessarily like traumatic, like truly, like your mom could say the sky is blue and you as a little kid thought it was purple. And now your whole world is like, well, crap, now that's blue. Now I can't trust purple ever again, right? Like our little brains, whatever inputs we're getting are just landing on meanings. And trauma like abuse and domestic violence and all of those things create a certain set of how we operate in the world. From my like understanding, it's not something I've experienced fully, but I was also in college running into this pattern of like never good enough. I became anorexic. I was like exercising anytime I was stressed out because I just had to perform. I had to like never stop because there was some childhood experience in me that said, you're not worthy unless you're doing. And so I like in inner child work have realized, well, that's not true. Like I'm still worthy, even if I don't run a marathon today. So I'd love to know what were some of those limiting beliefs that you discovered for yourself and how they've, kind of how you've worked with them. Because I know once you have that awareness, you're able to identify where your patterns come from, you're able to work with them in more productive ways instead of just being like, why am I like this? So do you remember some of those beliefs that you uncovered that had been limiting you? And
well, let me start with the key one, and it's based off of something that you just mentioned. So one of the key ones that I want to mention is one, never compare your trauma to others. And so the thing about trauma is that it impacts us in different ways. And so I may have a minor car accident, right, where someone bumps my bumper and I'm able to move forward, no issues, talk to them. Nothing happens after that to me psychologically. You may experience a minor car accident where someone bumps your bumper, and then moving forward, you're constantly looking behind you. If you're like stopped and a car is coming up behind you and you feel like they're not slowing down fast enough, you may tense up. Your body may, like go into the defensive mode. You may start having those thoughts about, oh my gosh, what if this person hits me again? So the thing about it is one way to smash some of those limiting beliefs is to not compare your experiences to others. So it's to me, trauma is trauma is trauma. You can't say, okay, well, and I'm very clear for me. I've had some very drastic episodes of trauma that I've had to experience. But for the person that it may not be as drastic, it may not even be as blatant. The other day I met with a woman, she was interested in seeking out my services, and we're on a consultation call, and she's explaining to me how in her culture, she was raised that she stays with her husband no matter what happens. And so in her case, he was making these impulsive decisions. He was spending a lot of their money and losing it on investments. And she was saying, well, I can't leave. I have to stay because that's just how I was raised, and I'm just figuring out how to deal with it. Well, whether she realizes or not, that's trauma. That's extremely traumatic. So in essence, what you were taught is that, because that's abusive. And so you were taught that no matter what your husband does to you, no matter what level, and that's financial abuse. So let's be clear, because there's different types of abuse. But for her, it was like, you are being subjected to this financial abuse, and you were taught in childhood that you're supposed to stay and remain loyal to this person who's not taking you into any type of regard. So I think that's the first thing. Do not compare your traumas. Do not compare your experiences. Do not compare the lessons and the things that were put into you to anyone else. The next thing I think is just recognizing that most of the stuff that we carry with us, most of our stuff, and that's what I like to call it, most of our stuff was given to us. It's not stuff that we
it's not yours. Not yours. Can you return it? Can we return it for Kohl's Cash or something?
You can. You totally can. So you have the option to do that work and to give it back. You totally can. I had to realize, I had to come to terms with the fact that me witnessing my dad be, physically assault my mom was not my stuff. It wasn't my stuff. Although I held on to it, it wasn't mine to own. And he had his own issues, and my mom had her own issues. And I literally had to do a lot of inner child work. We also call that shadow work, but I had to do a lot of inner child work, a lot of shadow work in comforting that little girl inside of me to say to her, you're okay. And you turn out okay. Your life gets better from here, and it's all right. And you don't have to take that on, so you can still love both of them because it's not yours, so you don't have to make a decision, because in that moment, that little girl felt like she had to make a decision between her mom and her dad. And the reality of the situation is that little girl did not have to make a decision, because that wasn't hers to carry. That burden wasn't hers. And so I had to do that work, and I had to do it. And I did a lot of it by myself, but it helped me because I'm now able to tell my clients or advise them on, hey, this is what I need you to do. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. It's hard as heck. And I'm not telling you it's easy, because this healing thing is not pretty and it's not attractive. But for you to get to where it is that you want to be in life, you have to do it.
Yeah.
So, all the different types of trauma. So I work with my clients on the money trauma side, the emotional trauma side, the psychological trauma side, the physical trauma side, because there's so many types. So I would say just kind of starting with those two, being clear on most of this is not yours, so you don't need to own it. And the last thing that I would say with the limiting beliefs is we have to start looking at ourselves like children. And what I mean by that is I have a 2-year-old, like you mentioned. And when my 2-year-old, as he has done today, takes all of his toys out the toy box, right? And my husband and I have said, don't take all the toys out the toy box. They're going to be everywhere. And he does it anyway, right? So we may say, okay, let's go sit in timeout for about, I usually don't do longer than 2 minutes because he's 2. So let's go sit in timeout for 2 minutes because you weren't listening to mommy and daddy, okay? But then when those 2 minutes are up, I don't still hold him to the same regard to the same issue, because we've already talked about it. I've already, disciplined him on that matter. But why is it that we beat ourselves up over the same thing over and over and over again? Why is it that we can't punish ourselves that one time or discipline ourselves that one time and then let it go. But instead, what we do is we hold on to it. We constantly remind ourselves about the things that has happened. We blame ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We're not good enough, right? Then we have those limiting beliefs. We stop trusting ourselves. We start, like putting ourselves in a place of, vicious cycle, right? I made this one horrible decision and I have to carry it for the rest of my life, right? So at what point do we say, okay, you have disciplined yourself enough for this one occurrence. You do not have to keep disciplining yourself for the same thing over and over and over again. So I would say those are like my three things when it comes to limiting beliefs and looking at it. And we could get into the ego versus intuition, but that's a lot to get into. But there's so many, different pieces there that we have to start dissecting and embracing.
Yeah. And what I found in my own experience with therapy and inner child work and having my own coaches is that even if I don't heal it all, like you said, it's messy and it's not linear and it's always evolving, healing processes. No matter where I am on the process, things open up for me. And I'm curious for you, especially as an entrepreneur and as a leader, how that piece of your healing journey, what piece of your healing journey inspires you to turn around and give this to others, right? Because I don't know what your other career was. Maybe you went into law school. I'm not sure, but I think it takes something strong or some desire within people who not just have their own healing journey and work on it in behind closed doors, but then turn around and say, this is part of my purpose, is not just to heal myself, but to share this with others. So tell us a little bit about that piece of your timeline.
So 21 again, we're back to 21. And I am not far off from finishing college. And I kind of, in just researching, I started to take a look at some things. And I came to terms with the fact that at one point I wanted to be a pediatrician. At one point I wanted to be a juvenile judge. And all of them, at one point, I think a teacher, all of them involve children. And so I decided then that I want to work with kids, but I want to help kids that have been through some of the things that I've been through. And that's where it all started. And I felt like I've been through all of these things. I've been through, I lived in a household where there was a lot of verbal abuse. There was a lot of, just a lack of emotional intelligence that occurred. My mom, she was a provider, and so she worked 12 to 14-hour days. She didn't attend, we had track meets, we had sports, we had award ceremonies, and she didn't really have time to attend those things because she was working to provide. But there was a void, there was a void of affection. There was a void of, just feeling like we were supported. And so there were things, that I had been through. And so I was like, I want to help kids navigate, the way that I have navigated and help them get to college and help them to learn that, exposure is huge in life. No matter what you go through, you can change the trajectory of your life. You do not have to fit into the status quo. You don't have to, achieve or follow the line that has been set out for you. So I think at 21, after taking that course, I made that decision that I have to take all of this stuff and I have to help people. Yeah. And then from there, I went on to get my master's in social work with the goal of becoming a licensed clinical social worker or a licensed therapist. And from there, specialized in trauma, and in adulthood, experienced more trauma from a guy breaking into my house when I was home and attempting to rape me, him not being successful. But that was a decision then I had to make, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to allow this to stop you from doing the work that you need to do? And again, I had made that decision that when things happen to me, my God-given journey and purpose is to take those things and get those lessons and then be able to take my experiences and the way in which I heal and help other people to do the same. And so
I have going to do with this. I feel like that is the write it down message of the day. What are you going to do with this?
Yeah, because you have it.
You have
it. You've been given it. And so one of the things, and not trying to get all, religious, but I definitely want to get spiritual a bit because I intertwine spirituality into everything that I do. Mm-hmm. One thing that I realize about people is when things are going great, right? They're like, God is great. God is good. God is good, right? Oh, God is so good.
I love the law of attraction. I always get what I want. Everything is working
wonderful.
Out for me.
It's great, right? Oh, thank you, God. Yes. The same thinking has to be applied when things are not going the way that you want them to go, right? Yeah. Because, and I had to come to grips with that because for a long time, I was upset with God. God and I, I was like, why did you take my dad? That was like a huge thing. And especially growing up for me. So when my mom and I would get into it, I'd be like, oh, I wish my dad was here. And I'd get so upset because he wasn't. And, so God and I, we had a thing. And when I reached, again in my 20s, I started to understand like, you've been here, you have been here, because the reality of the situation was if my dad, and I left out this part, but he died from a heart attack, leaving his apartment, and he had a gun on him. And so his plan was to come back probably and kill my mom, as he said. And somebody intervened there. There was some type of divine intervention. And I know it may sound weird to people listening, but, I understood.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're willing to like seek the lesson in things, maybe not always the right meaning or the right, why is this happening to me? Right. But when you can ask yourself that powerful question of like, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this? Right? Like, this is the set of events. Now I can make empowered decisions. And I think for you, this accumulation of tools over time expand your capacity to do good with the things you got. Right. And I think that is a reflection of your journey and all the things that you've accomplished is that you've consistently asked yourself, what am I going to do with this for good, for others? And I would imagine that puts you in a pretty fulfilling life to ask that question and give it to others.
It does. I'm very, very happy. And for a long time, I tried to hide my experiences because I felt ashamed. I felt like you've been through all this trauma. You're a therapist. Who's going to want to, come to you and work with you? Like, you're supposed to have it all together. You're supposed to.
Imposter syndrome alive and well.
Yes. And we do that, but I think also it's the fear. It's the minimizing. It's way more comfortable, honestly, to shrink. It's way more comfortable to hide. It's easier to say to yourself and to talk out of it. Like, it's easier to say, who's going to listen to this? And really, when I broke through that was when I started writing my book. And my book comes out in December. And I go through everything and I just let it out. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. Like, and so I just let it all out. And I'm like, this is everything. And, it's so healing for me and so transformative. But I think for anyone that's listening to this, who, they're in that space and they're wondering, what can I do? Yeah. Be open, be honest, embrace all of you. Don't hide. Don't feel ashamed of anything that has happened to you because it's your path. It's your experience. And the people that are meant to work with you will come to you, but they cannot do that if you're hiding parts of yourselves, because it's those very things that you try to hide that will stop them from finding you. And so when I started becoming very clear on who I am, my gifts, why I have them, why I experience those things, and being open about this is what I went through and this is what I can do. And so now I coach women, primarily women entrepreneurs, because I have over 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur, the ups and downs, I've done it, with the research, I've done it with the coach, I've done it without a coach. I've done it all the ways that you can possibly do it.
And so much of what you just said, the way that your beliefs manifested for you of like, who am I to be doing this? Like, I don't want to share too much. Like, I should be, like that is echoed in every entrepreneur's mind, because when you step out and you're going to be the leader, or you want to help others, or you want to start a business, all that stuff just gets cranked up Because it's fine if you're just in your house not feeling, but when you start to put yourself out there and push your comfort zone, that stuff gets really loud. And as entrepreneurs, I feel like you can't not be on a healing journey.
Right.
It's just kind of parallel. Healing, and putting yourself out there, healing, asking for your rates to raise, healing, and getting more clients. Like it all kind of works in unison.
Mm-hmm. So even there with the rates raised, like you have to know that you're worth it. So there's so many parts to it. I do a lot with money trauma and people's thinking around money, because the other traumas, all that stuff plays a role into how much you value yourself and your worth. And if you feel like, will people buy this if I raise my price? And why will they buy it from me? You have everything that you need to be successful. You just have to know that. Right. And people will buy. Your tribe, the people that are meant to work with you, they will come to you. They will find you. You're not meant for everyone. It's okay. Because I know I'm not. I am very intense. I put everything into my sessions with my clients. I get results. I expect results. And I can only work with women that are ready to really make those changes. I cannot work with those that come and they're not clear. So you're not meant for everyone, and that's okay. You have to be okay with that.
Yeah. And so for women who are resonating, they're with you, they're like, yeah, I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe they're not even totally clear on what their traumas are or what they landed on in, childhood, but they know that they're hitting that upper limit. They're running into the same problem, same pattern, the same income. How can they continue this conversation and work with you or read your book? How can folks get in touch with you?
Perfect. So definitely I'm on Instagram, I'm on Clubhouse, I'm on Facebook at Dr. Fanike. That's DrFanike. You can also go to www.drfanike.com. I have a trauma quiz up there. It kind of helps you to assess if you've even experienced trauma, what that trauma looks like. And it provides you with some type of guidance on what next steps are. You can always book a consultation with me. I only work with people once I have actually spoken to them, because again, they have to be ready. So to do that, I always meet with everyone before I work with them. I have coaching options for women that are ready to move. I have an intensive, and then I also have a membership for those that are like, hey, I just want to kind of touch on it a little bit, dip my hands in there, not jump all the way in to the water. And so I have different options, but starting with that, just booking a consultation or reaching out and going from there and seeing if it's a good fit. And if you're a good fit for me, if I'm a good fit for you.
Yeah, we'll make sure we have links to all of that. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your story and your insights with us. This is definitely key to the recipe of making your dream life your real life, right? Overcoming the things that are holding you back, the things that is no longer yours, so you can step into what it is you want. So thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another inspiring guest that will help you make your dream life your real life. And don't forget to hop on over to dreamlifeisreallife.com/show for specific goodies that we talked about today and access to continue the conversation with these guests as well as myself. I cannot wait to see what you create. Until next time.